Hi there, I'm Nicole. Welcome back to my channel. I am a writer and story nerd, and today I am talking about epiphanies that I had while I was trying to fix my novel. So about a week ago now, I published a video called My Novel is a Disaster, and I have been since I realized it was a disaster, trying to figure out how to fix it. So my hope for this video, as well as any other video, is that some of my processes and thought processes might help influence your own ideas for your process and how you approach revision and stuff like that. Let me quickly just give you a little background on the story. So it's about two girls who live in Upper Canada in 1837. They are wealthy, they're members of the family compact, they're sisters, their names are Greer and Aggie, and it's kind of how they go through the year 1837 when all of this stuff in Upper Canada is changing. Epiphany number 1. Okay. So in the first draft, the story was a revolution story with love story subplots. Kind of like we're trying to go on an adventure, we're trying to do this thing, and in the process of doing this thing, we fall in love. Yeah, that's a perfectly valid way to do it. Obviously, because you've seen tons of movies and shows and things that do that. The Hunger Games is a great example that I'm going to keep going back to in this video. The Hunger Games, she has to go to the Hunger Games. She falls in love, kind of, sort of, not really. Peeta falls in love with her anyways while she's competing in the Hunger Games. But I had a really hard time trying to make this work. For that story to work, we have to try to do this thing, and in the process we fall in love. So we must have a motivation for doing the thing. But I could not figure out a way to make them want to do the thing that was believable and that worked. In the first draft, it was just convoluted and messy, and I didn't like it. The answer came to me really quickly, actually, just to turn it on its head. Instead of a revolution story with love story subplots, the new novel is a love story during a revolution. And as soon as I just twisted that around, everything worked so much better. Like, it has exactly the same elements as before. But the political strife and the rebellion, instead of being like the focus or the core of it, the core is the love story. So the political strife and the rebellion creates conflict in the love stories and motivates any contact that the main characters have with the rebellion in the political landscape. Here, not only does it fit my character better, but I feel like I am more confident with the structure of a love story. So, especially more so than a revolution story, not that I didn't look into it and read a whole bunch and watch a whole bunch, but I just feel a lot more confident having the love story as my core, and I feel like I can pull that off because I have more control over the love story. Where the revolution story, I really want to stick to historical accuracy. So I cannot manipulate that as much as I can manipulate the love story to make it actually work as a good story, if that makes sense. So the second epiphany that I had is that revolution stories are hard to do. So I got the title like a revolution story. It's part of the story grid society genre. I'll put a link to the story grid genres below. These stories are super hard to do because you have to explain all of the problems in the society and basically justify why it should be overturned in time for the characters to join the rebellion, right? It seems like there's really two ways to do this to sort of show how bad the society is and justify, like, we need to overturn this. The first one is the Hunger Games, where you're shown very, very obviously how crappy this world is. And even that took time. Like, the whole first book was about setting up how screwed up the world was. In Matched, which is a trilogy that came out as like a follow-on of the Hunger Games. It's like the Hunger Games, but with like pretty dresses. It was a version where you have like a very privileged character who little by little unveils the truth around her and becomes convinced that things in the society are bad, bad, bad. So there's kind of two ways to do it. Matched was also a trilogy where the revolution happened at the end. This is one book, and I'm 100% sure amazing revolutionary stories have been done in one book. But I had the struggle of trying to explain all the problems with the society and justify why it should be overturned in time for the characters to start working for the rebellion in the second act from the perspective of very, very privileged people who were not only very, very privileged, but were not a party to any of the corruption or whatever. Like, they're young girls who were rich in 1837 in high society. They did not have the opportunity to like get into the legal documents and see what was going on. They weren't welcome in the courtrooms to like see people get ejected, all this stuff. So like I couldn't figure out how on earth I could show that this society and show all the problems with it without like info dumping, basically, or being very historically not accurate. The other thing that problem that I noticed was, as I learned more and more about the Upper Canada Rebellion, I became a bit wary of how to present it. It's not like the American Revolution, right? Because the overall story of the American Revolution, and I'm sure that, you know, there's controversy in here too, potentially, but like the overall narrative of that is you have these amazing heroes who fight for freedom and are willing to sacrifice things to get it. They're like heroic freedom fighters, right? Now, the Upper Canada Rebellion failed, so the prevailing narrative of it is pretty controversial. Like, the people in it kind of thought they were being like the Americans, but even the leader of the Upper Canada Rebellion, whose name is William Mackenzie, he was kind of like a controversial figure. It's not one of these like big epic like we're gonna throw over the society things, and it's not one of these big epic like failures like the 300 or whatever, Thermopylae. It's neither of those things. It's a lot more ambiguous, and I feel like that makes it a little bit more complicated and like nuanced. So I feel like it takes time to get through those nuances. So anyways, I decided to go more of a matched route with it. So instead of the girls kind of being involved in like an action plot through the middle build to prepare for this rebellion, which also isn't historically accurate, I'm making it an information plot where I drip, drop the corruption and inequity, and we discover it with the character. A lot of like how in a fantasy book, that character, you'll have like a newbie character show up and they'll learn how the world works with the reader. That's what I want to do in my story, and this feels so much more manageable. I can do things slowly, which feels comfortable and within my wheelhouse, and it avoids all of this info dumping. And then the third one that I had, I was listening to Brandon Sanderson's lecture. One of them, I've been listening to that series. I feel like since Kate Kavanaugh put up a vlog about listening to Brandon Sanderson, I'd watched a few of them beforehand, but then when she did, I was like reinvigorated to go and rewatch them, and I've seen a few other author tubers doing the same. But basically, he talked a little bit about like inverting things in plot and how to avoid derivativeness. And so I'm just going to give an example kind of one of the things that I've come up with that's made me really excited about the story. So let me be clear, I was not trying to like be 100% original. I'm sure that this idea that I'm going to present is not. None of them are. But I wanted to think, okay, how could I take what's typical, what I typically see, and make it more exciting for me? There's a mother character in this story. We have a little bit of a thing going on that's very reminiscent, I guess, of like Pride and Prejudice or even Bridgerton, which has been on my mind. I did a review of it, it's up there, where there's kind of like a marriage plot. Like, these are young girls, they're in society, they are obviously thinking about getting married, or at least one of them is. And I was really sort of internalizing those typical kind of marriage plots when I was coming up with the parents, because in my version, the mother character is very much the mom in, you know, all the moms in Bridgerton and the mom in Pride and Prejudice, but she's just meaner and sterner and less likable. And then the father is a lot, again, like the father you'd see in Pride and Prejudice or something, where he's like just kind of there, and he's like, everyone calm down, stop worrying about getting married, it's fine. And then he's off doing, I don't know, father political things somewhere. And I didn't love either of those characters. And so I started thinking, I'd just finished Brandon Sanderson's lecture, and I was like lying in my bed, and I thought, what if I inverted that? What if I flipped that? So instead, have the mom be kind of like indifferent to them getting married and like not really caring about it, and have the father be very much like pushing the girls to get married and like setting them up and stuff. And that, like, you know, you have a good idea when it just synergizes and you're like, yes, and yes, and yes, and, because mine was yes, and if I do that, then that connects the whole marriage plot thing even tighter to the rebellion and the political stuff that's going on. And if I do that, then I can do this really cool thing with the mom, and the mom can like, oh, the mom has turned into one of my favorite characters. I'm so excited to write any scene with her. I want her in everything because I just love her now, that I've sort of changed things around. And so that was another epiphany that I had, and I've been doing this process for a lot of things in my book that I'm like, I feel like this is, you know, a typical thing that you see in this kind of story. Let me see if I can invert that. And in some cases, no, I'm not going to invert that. I decide, you know what, I'm going to keep it as it is. And in others, I'm like, ooh, maybe we could change that and like flip what I typically see around. And it's been so fun to go through that and to really try to avoid derivativeness. We're not like, again, it's not really going for originality, but it's trying to avoid derivativeness and really go towards making myself excited about writing it. So I have a lot of developments. I would love to hear about how you sort of come up with ideas for your stories, if you've had any big epiphanies, if you use any resources to help you. What's your process, like your pre-writing process? Before you even get to writing the story, what do you do? Because that's kind of the part that I'm in right now, and I would love to hear from you. So thank you so much for watching. If you are not subscribed, hit the big red button. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, because YouTube loves thumbs up, apparently, according to the YouTube gods. And I will see you next time.